So we finally have the early spoilers for chapter 16 of Boruto to Vortex, and it pretty much shows the members of Team Shinki welcoming Konohamaru to the land of wind. So we have a few things to discuss, so let's get into it. Now, as you guys know, this is just the sneak peek, so the full spoilers will be out in a few days. So this one pretty much shows these ninjas saying welcome to the land of wind, thank you for your cooperation. And Konohamaru then replied saying, nice to meet you, let's head there right away. Now these guys appear to be the members of Team Shinki, the same guys we saw back in chapter 15. The female one is known as Yoda, and even though she was pretty non-existent in the manga continuity, the anime did give her some needed screen time. Now she's pretty skilled in taijutsu and her agility is really amazing as seen in the fight versus Shikadai, but the most interesting part about this character is her sensitive hearing. This allows her to sense even the slightest movements over a great distance, which means she doesn't need to see someone to be able to fight them. Though overcoming this ability is actually quite simple, as seen with Shikadai using the sound of his bombs going off to mask his movements. She's also able to generate powerful sonic booms, which is pretty much a sound-based jutsu, so it's not quite Temari, but almost there. So while impressive, there's not much to tackle when it comes to this character, so hopefully TBV gives her a bit more to do. Now the second character is known as Araya, which is kind of weird, you'd think the other one would be called Araya and this guy would be called Yodo, so I don't know, it's kind of weird. But yeah, this one also didn't get much screen time, but his showing was a tad bit better. You see, he's pretty much a skilled kenjutsu user, which is pretty much someone who uses swords in its simplified form, okay? He's also able to use the puppet technique, which he uses to manipulate a lifelike replica of himself. Also, his control over the puppet allowed him to fight on par with Sarada Uchiha, even after she activated the Sharingan. Granted, this was a much weaker version of Sarada. By the way, he's also able to manifest his chakra threads from a considerable distance while remaining unnoticed. So he's a great fighter at long distance and also close range using kenjutsu. With that said, nothing we've seen so far would make anyone believe that these guys can handle the power of a Shinju, especially given the fact that Gaara and Team Shinki lost to the Matsuri Shinju. So I do find it somewhat interesting that they sent Konohamaru and likely the members of Team 10 when Gaara and Team Shinki wasn't strong enough to handle them. So the writers kind of implying that at least Konohamaru is stronger than Gaara at this point in time, and it would make sense given the fact that Konohamaru was able to react to Hidari's Chidori at point blank range, which, as I pointed out in my ranking video, that feat is even way more impressive than Sarada's since he doesn't have a Sharingan. With that said, narratively speaking, Konohamaru shouldn't be able to defeat Matsuri by himself since it negates the purpose of the other members of Team 10. So the most likely case is that Matsuri will still be stronger than him to some degree, which would give Shikadai and Chocho some much needed screen time. Now there's also the fact that Team 10 is currently short one member since Inogen is still likely out for the count. So someone else is likely tagging along with them for this mission, and that person is likely Mitsuki. Now this makes the most sense from a narrative standpoint as well, since aside from Team 10, Mitsuki is the only new gen character that has some ties to the Sand Village, that being Shinki. Now of course this doesn't involve Boruto since he's currently a rogue ninja, so he won't be sent on official missions. With that said, the point is that Mitsuki has a history with Shinki from their fight in the Chunin exams, where they kinda showed interest in each other. So we might finally get to see Sage Mitsuki versus Shinki since Mitsuki forfeited the match back in part 1. Now notice I did kinda randomly inject Shinki into the narrative. That's because I believe that we're going to see both the Matsuri and Shinki Shinju in the upcoming chapter. It makes perfect sense since Ryu is after Gaara, he's the person he wants to consume, and if Konohamaru and Team 10 is being sent to protect Gaara, obviously there's going to be a battle. Then you have the fact that Konohamaru is Matsuri's target, so she'll likely show up as well to consume him. So it is looking a bit scary for Team 10, but if Sage Mitsuki can handle Shinki by himself, that just leaves the rest of them to handle Matsuri. In any case, Boruto's hideout is somewhere in the land of wind, so maybe just Superman flies there and saves them before anything happens. Now I wasn't sure if I was gonna include this in the video, but someone did link me on Twitter to this panel, this spoiler where it shows Boruto using his Drogon and the Karma Seal and walking towards the Shinju, and this one is definitely fake because it's a panel from chapter 3 which had Boruto walking towards Code with Rasengan Uzihiko. So if anyone else saw this panel on Twitter, it's definitely not a real spoiler, so just keep that in mind. Now this portion of the video is gonna be me addressing the predictions some of you guys had for this chapter and just Boruto fans in general. So we have Persa 12 saying that Boruto and Kawaki's conversation gets interrupted by Shikamaru, who then calls Kawaki urgently to his office. Boruto hands Kawaki one of those seals he uses with FTG, and tells him that he'll be close and leaves. He then says that Shikamaru assembles a team to assist Gaara and the Sand Village. So Konohamaru will lead Kawaki, Mitsuki, Sarada, and Shikadai in this mission. He also mentions that Sai will lead Konoha's defenses, with Delta, Daemon, Sumire, Inajin, and Chocho joining him. Now this part I did find a bit interesting because I did mention before that I think Mitsuki will be on the team going to the Sand Village, but I don't see Sarada and definitely not Kawaki leaving the village as well. That's because that's too many of their strongest characters leaving the village when the village itself is also under attack. And we know that Konohamaru and Sarada are also targets for the Shinju, so I did find it kind of weird that they sent Konohamaru to the Sand Village knowing that he's also a target, but also sending Sarada doesn't quite make sense. And then you have the fact that Kawaki doesn't really care about anyone else but Naruto's village and Naruto's people, so he just wants to keep them safe. So I don't see Kawaki leaving the village to go protect the Sand Village while knowing that Himawari is a target of the Shinju as well, and Himawari is in the village. So yeah, I don't think that part is gonna happen, but maybe it does and I'm just wrong, so we'll see. Now the next point says that Konohamaru has a brief conversation with Boruto in which they agree that Boruto will help Konohamaru's team and will report to Shikamaru. Boruto also assures that he will have someone watching Konoha in case they need help, that someone being Kashin Koji. Now I think this will definitely happen because it does make sense. Boruto is in the land of wind, so it's easy for him to back them up if they do need assistance. Then it says that Kankuro will be the interim Kage in Gaara's absence, which is the obvious choice. The next point says Kawaki talks to Ada and asks her about Amado and the modifications made to his body. She confirms it but tells him that those modifications are keeping him alive and removing them now will be extremely dangerous. Just like Boruto says, he needs to train until fighting is safe without his increased defense and regeneration. Now, I don't think this part is gonna happen because we've kind of addressed that Kawaki doesn't have the time to go through the natural training needed to achieve the power he needs to fight Jura, so the limiters are definitely coming off. And I also didn't get the point about why it would be dangerous for him to have the limiters removed, but based on him saying that Kawaki needs to train until fighting is safe without his increased defense and regen, I think he's implying that the points used to raise Kawaki's defense to above maximum were taken from his offensive power. So if Amado does remove the limiters, then Kawaki's defense and regen would drop below maximum, and that would then increase his offensive power. Now I don't think that's the case. I think the limiters were just placed on his offensive power and the other stats were just boosted separately, because a limiter just places a cap on something, which means you can't access anything above it. It doesn't distribute points to different areas, so I don't think that's what was said, but I could be wrong. Maybe that is what happened and Boruto wasn't aware of that, so we'll see. With that said, let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think is going to happen in the upcoming chapter? Do you think Mitsuki is going to tag along? Do you think he's going to fight Shinki? Do you think we're going to get Mitsuki finally tapping into his true power with Sage Mode? Because that fight versus Boruto was embarrassing, and I might just make a rant video because I don't know, every time I bring up Mitsuki I always rant about him losing so miserably to Boruto. It was just embarrassing. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Drop a like if you liked it and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.